So the class is being recorded, and my name is Dr. Sam, and this is A230A. We're doing the Duchess of Malfi, and we're finishing it. So how much do we know about the Duchess of Malfi? Obviously, we know a lot. Talking about the Duchess of Malfi against the climate of ideas that we've been talking about and for the past 4 weeks. Remember, we spoke about the Renaissance, we spoke about um, the ideas and the ideologies that were widespread at the time. Remember the idea of established order, the idea of hierarchies. Uh, um, spoke about Othello, and the hierarchy was a hierarchy of color and race, but this time around with the Duchess of Malfi, it's a hierarchy of status and rank. Spoke about the idea of transgression, the fact that you have to follow traditions, and you need to also live up to the expectations of your society. If not, the consequences are dire. And we have seen that with Othello, and we are starting to see this with the Duchess of Malfi. We haven't seen that fully yet, but of course, you know that it is a tragedy, and you can almost tell what will eventually happen to the transgressors and the violators. And the violators, not in our eyes, because if we look at things from a 21st century perspective, it would be different. We have interfaith marriages, we have intercaste marriages, we have interracial marriages, where I told you at one point, for example, uh, my mother, Allah yarhamha, was white, and my father was, yeah, kind of dark or black, my color. So this could have been frowned upon and not accepted in the 16th and the 17th century. But from a 20th century and 21st perspective, this is obviously, yeah, there is obviously nothing wrong with it. So we're reading the play against the age, the 16th and the 17th century, not from a 21st century perspective. In the Duchess of Malfi, like we said, it's more of a rank and status kind of thing, where you have on top the Duchess, the sitting queen, and you have Antonio, a lowborn at the bottom, and obviously um, there is obviously something wrong. You cannot, as a queen, reach out to a commoner and get married to him. With all the sincerity and of this kind and the purity of this kind of love. It's not accepted, or it wasn't accepted at all. So what happens if the queen insists, if the duchess insists? You know, if you know that this is a tragedy and the framework is a tragedy, you know, of course, you can almost tell that she will fall eventually. What else did we say about the Duchess of Malfi? We said that it's, um, I mean, the idea that you have a tragic heroine, not hero, is also quite innovative and quite new. I mean, if uh, if you think of the so many tragedies that had been produced until perhaps the Duchess of Malfi, they were all or they all feature tragic heroes, not tragic heroines. So having a tragic heroine is obviously unprecedented, is quite unheard of. And again, this is also a reflection of the kind of transitioning that we're having, that perhaps we're moving towards times and ages where people are becoming more liberal, embracing new liberal ideas. Women are given what they should have been given for centuries and decades, but we're seeing we're not seeing a full kind of uh, reward. I mean, women are not compensated fully because eventually you're going to see that the Duchess also gets killed for what people perceived as infringement and violation of societal norms and mores, as we're going to see. So let's go to the second chapter in the book, where we're moving beyond Act 1 and 2. We're moving towards Act 3, 4, and 5, and see how different acts, 3, 4, and 5 from the previous acts. Where did we stop? We stopped on this note that Antonio is given prominence, if you like. Antonio is, it's as if the dramatist is trying to create a whole profile for Antonio. We're getting to know more about different aspects of his character. And our impression about him is obviously very positive, right? This is obviously preparing us for the bombshell. Remember, I told you that there is going to be a bombshell at one point, right? The bombshell would be this marriage, this kind of matrimonial between the Duchess on top and Antonio at the bottom. This is a bombshell in and of itself. So, in order uh, for for the impact of this bombshell, in order for it not to be huge and I mean and in order for it not to have so much collateral damage, we're going to have this idea that Antonio deserves to be seen this way by the Duchess. Antonio has merit. Antonio is very smart. Antonio works hard. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be kind of contrasting two ways of looking of promoting people at the time. Uh, you have this idea of birthrights. You are born into high society. Your family is royalty. You are perhaps a member of the royal family, or you're a big businessman or sheikh or whatever. You have lots of money, so your way, it seems that it moves, I mean, very smoothly, and you move from one stage in life to another. You get promoted easily. You can land the best job there is, and everything. This is birthright. This is um, judging you not based on your skills, the skills that you develop. No, this is based on inheritance. Your father is such and such. Your family is that big, so everything is easy. This was the system at the time. The other system, which came with the perhaps the ethos of Protestantism, you would have this merit-based evaluation. You are evaluated and you are promoted based on your merit. And merit here means that you work very hard, you achieve, you study very hard, so you earn recognition. You don't get it easily because of your birthrights. No, you earn it, you fight for it. Okay, so this was perhaps a system that is evolving and developing. It's not complete yet because actually Antonio is going to also be punished at the end. But at least we're seeing, signs of change, that people are judging other people based on their merits, not based on their birthrights and their inheritance, and perhaps they have a different blood color or something of this sort. So this is what the whole idea is about. We have two opposing worldviews. You have this worldview of birthrights, and you have this worldview of merit, استحقاق. You get promoted, you climb up the social ladder. There is room for social mobility. If you're low born or low caste, you can climb up the social ladder and you become something. But this is what we're having even in the 20th and the 21st century, right? Of course, we have birthrights and everything, but we still have people who work hard, who study hard like you, can aim big and can hope for the best. And the next thing you know is that perhaps you become something. You work in a university, you become a scientist, you travel here, you travel. It's all coming down to the idea of merit-based evaluation. They call it meritocracy. This system of evaluation that is obviously objective and not subjective. Let's move on. Okay, so it's again John Webster's The Tragedy of the Duchess of Malfi. And we're doing four. And four has the title Tragic Conflict. So it's a conflict that we're having, and obviously this conflict is tragic because of what happens or what will happen at the end of the play. Okay, so when I talk about a conflict entails and presupposes different sides, or at least two sides to a conflict. So, do we have conflicts in the play? Have we seen any? I'm asking everyone. Do we have sides and those sides are in conflict with each other, in disagreement with each other? Hmm. Did you hear my question? Can you hear me at all? Hmm. Do we
Yes.
have a, yeah, so do we have conflicting parties and conflicting sides in the play so far? Remember, we spoke. Yes, come to the mic. Come to the mic and share with us. So let's look at the characters that we have. Yeah, somebody come to the mic and tell us who the characters are. Give me names. How many have we seen so far? Iago. We have the Duchess, right? We have Antonio. We have the Cardinal. We have Fernand. We have Delio. These are characters, right? And we can always divide them along these conflicting lines that I'm talking about. You have, of course, the conflict is based on the ideas that they embrace. You have Antonio and the Duchess on one side, okay, and you have I'm sorry, the Cardinal and Ferdinand and Bussola on the other side, right? Like I said, if you have conflicts, and those conflicts are normally based on ideas. You have ideas and ideologies that perhaps are not in agreement with ideas and ideologies of other people. So you have uh, um, the Duchess and Antonio. They are liberal, obviously, in their thoughts and in their ideas. And especially the Duchess, she believes that she has the right to get married to whomever she chooses. And on the other hand, you have her brothers who believe, no, you cannot do that. You can, it's not, you're not free to choose whoever you like because family honor is involved because we also have our, as brothers, we have rights and you have obligations towards us. So obviously, this is a conflict. They wouldn't allow her to get married to the one she loves and the one she chooses. So this is the conflict that we're having. Okay, sometimes you have honest difference of opinions where I may something, I may say something and you don't agree with me, and it's good. I mean, to have people differing and expressing their views and opinions. This is obviously very nice. But when it comes to traditions, it becomes a little bit difficult to accept other people's opinions. So you have those traditionalists, and you have people who are a little bit liberal minded, and they never meet. So to get married to the one that you love, obviously, is a liberal idea. Okay, and it opposes the idea that your family should endorse this kind of marriage, should bless this kind of marriage, should even choose for you. So this is the conflict that we're having. And of course, because of the fact that traditions are very strong and very trenchant in society, something that you cannot change easily, it is as if you're hitting a wall, okay, perhaps with your hands. And of course, you know what will happen to your hand if you're hitting a wall. Okay, so you're hitting the wall of traditions only to find yourself hurt, right? You're hurting. And it goes as far as losing your life for that. Again, you're not living up to the expectations of society, and society wouldn't allow you to uh, get away with it. Okay, so we have um, this tragic conflict that I'm talking about. And of course, the two sides or the two parties to the conflict are on the one hand, you have the Duchess, you have Antonio, and you have their new ideas. And on the other side, you have Fernand, the Cardinal, Busolo, and of course, the old traditions. Okay, so we started having signs of this conflict in Acts 1 and 2, and obviously it gets intensified in Acts 3, 4, and 5. Again, if Act 1 and 2 had those glimmers of love in them, where at one point you would see the Duchess courting Antonio, asking his hand in marriage. This is love, obviously. The rest of the play is full of representations of death. It's death that we're seeing and we're having for the rest of the play. And then we have another scene in Act 3. We're starting Act 3, where we have scene 1, where we have another encounter and exchange and conversation between Delio and Antonio. Um, and I mean, they talk about, the issues of this kind of dukedom and how sad they are for what is happening, and the Malfi court is not in its best shape and form. And we get to know that years has passed and elapsed. So obviously the scene is meant to tell us that years has passed, and then that was enough time for the Duchess to give birth to two more children, a son and a daughter. Obviously, the husband is Antonio. So the function and the purpose of this scene is to inform us of the passage of time. Again, we're going to also know that Fernand is coming back, and everybody is now hearing rumors about the Duchess and the fact that she may have gotten married, but they don't know yet to whom. They are not totally sure that she got married. And obviously, they're leaving it, or they are leaving it all to Busola to give them the news. And then you have Fernand and Bussola on stage. Again, Fernand is having his doubts and he is sharing them with Bussola. And he is obviously um, angry and upset. He wants to know, but he hasn't known yet. And he is going to ask Bussola for a key to the Duchess' chamber. Remember, he is royalty. He is a member of the royal family. Okay, first of all, our bed chambers and our bedrooms are very private places. It's only us who have access to them, right? You don't share your bed chamber with just anybody, right? So it's very strange that, first of all, that Fernand is asking, is going to go to the bed chamber of the Duchess. He could have asked her to meet him in the reception, or I mean, obviously these are palaces. So this is very strange. And the other thing, let's assume that it's okay with them for him to go to the bedchamber. He can simply knock on the door. No, he is asking for the key. Obviously, you're the only person who has the key to your bedchamber is yourself. So if somebody is asking somebody else about the key, obviously something is wrong. And this is, you need to also remember that we're talking about a royalty. He is uh, um, a royal family member, and normally you wouldn't expect him to behave this way. So to ask for a spare key, and obviously is going to go without the knowledge of his sister. Is that acceptable? Absolutely not. So as a member of the audience, you start to feel scared. Perhaps this guy is up for something evil. Perhaps he wants to kill her. And of course, we like her. She's such a nice lady. So we feel more for her than for him. And we haven't seen so far that she has done something that would kind of prompt him or push him to do harm to her. Even when she comes and she tells that she got married, and obviously marriage is a legitimate kind of thing. What's wrong with that, right? So what we're trying to stress here is that the demands of Fernand is telling us something about him. They indicate what kind of character he is, and the fact that he started this journey of going down in morals, in nobility. So towards the end of the play, he is evil. Towards the end of the play, he is base. He is he is very low. Okay, so this can be also a turning point. I mean, the fact that he is going to go and hide behind the curtains or the wings, and then comes the Duchess, and of course she doesn't know that he is there. It can create this kind of suspense and this kind of fear. We're fearful of the prospect that he may kill her. So we have a threat. Ferdinand is the threat. Uh, um, which or of which the Duchess is unaware. Again, the beginning would be that you have the Duchess and Antonio in their bedchamber, typical of a man and his wife. They are happy and everything, and then the next thing you know is that Antonio is going to go out with the maidservant. I mean, it's a jovial kind of atmosphere. They are, pranking each other, cracking jokes and everything. And then once Antonio is out of sight, you have Ferdinand behind the curtains, and we start to have this kind of confrontation between the Duchess and Fernand. Yeah, I would like you to look at the language that Fernand is using, and then look at how the Duchess is responding. Um, okay, so the Duchess is now left alone in her chamber, and Fernand enters. Um, Again, she doesn't know that he is around, and that would give you the feeling that she's very vulnerable. She's very weak because she doesn't have the knowledge that we have. You feel you feel sympathetic and you feel empathetic towards her, right? You put yourself in her position. If somebody comes from the back and you're unaware that he or she is in the back, and obviously you can expect the worst. I mean, he may kill you, he may stab you. So you're made to feel that she is very isolated and she's very vulnerable. And this is obviously, these are very real human weaknesses and feelings that we are all likely to have. Um, so it's a major turning point. Um, uh, we're going to start to have this kind of conversation between the two when he reveals himself. And you're going to notice that Fernand is dominating the proceedings. He says everything. He is obviously very angry and very upset, and he talks in a loud voice, and he uses animal imagery. Uh, and sometimes he asks, and when she tries to rebut what he is saying and reply to him, he asks her to stay silent. He shuts her up, like we say. Up till this moment, he's not very, he doesn't seem that he's so crazy and he's so mad, but at least you can almost tell that he is very angry and very agitated. And one way of judging and telling that he is very agitated would be the number of rhetorical questions that he asks. The rhetorical questions are questions that wouldn't need answers. You, uh, it is true that they look like questions or they sound like questions, but they are actually statements that they are making. You address elements of nature, you appeal to forces of nature, like when he says, virtue, where art thou hid? Obviously, he's commenting on what she does or what she will do, getting married to the wrong guy. He's saying virtue. Of course, you know virtue, virtue, good man, good man. Yeah, he's as if he is personifying virtue or good manners, saying, where are you hiding good manners? So it is as if he's trying to say that she doesn't have those good manners. Um, and then he, from time to time, he starts to attack her verbally and rebuke her, saying, die then quickly. I mean, he's telling her, go and die, kill yourself. And the howling of a wolf is music to thee, screech owl. And as you can see, he is using and he is invoking very animalistic images. I mean, the image of the wolf, the image of the owl. And these are obviously uh, uh, animals that are not, they are enemies to human beings. If a wolf, if a wolf sees you, I mean, the wolf would kill you, right? We're not talking about dogs and cats here, right? So if anything, talking about animals and using those wild animals imagery would tell you or perhaps would give you another indication that this guy likes those comparisons. And if anything, it tells you about his character. He always invokes those most negative aspects of the animal world. Um, he talks about the absent husband, Antonio, and he, of course, he threatens and what will happen to him. And she seizes the opportunity and tells him, "Would you like to meet him?" So she believes that she didn't do anything wrong. He is her legitimate husband. That's why when he mentions him, of course, he doesn't know who the husband is. When he mentions, I mean, he tells her, "Your husband." She tells him, "Would you like to meet him? Come." He says, "No, we cannot do that because I don't know what will happen. Obviously, both of us will be damned. Damned means we're going to kill each other." Um, if anything, I mean, this is an indication that we have this genuine moral anxiety about this kind of guy and his character. So he is a villain, it is true. He is the principal villain, but he is endowing him. I mean, Webster is endowing Ferdinand with this moral and psychological complexity that we may find lacking in Bussola and Iago. Um, and then he leaves the stage, of course, threatening and cursing and assuring her that she is undone and ruined, which he will, kind of make good of. I mean, he's going to make good of his threats, and the next thing you know is that she is going to be killed in Act 4. Um, what this is the Fernand's part of the conversation. Does it mean that the Duchess didn't talk? Of course not. She spoke, and her reactions were very reasoned and reasonable. They were very calm. They were very logical. If you make those comparisons, of course, the Duchess will win in argument. And let's look at her language and her conduct. She meets Fernand's anger with clear, straightforward statements, and at one point she tells him, it's accusing and telling, using very strong language, vulgar, animalistic, and she simply says, "I pray, sir, hear me. I am married. Will you see my husband? Please hear me out. I am married. I'm married means I'm not in an illicit relationship. It's not an affair, for God's sake. I am lawfully and legitimately married." She's trying to remind you, alert him to this. "And I'm ready to show you my husband. Would you like to see him? I'm not doing anything wrong." And then she follows that with a very interesting question and statement. She says, "Why might not I marry? Why wouldn't I get married? Why not? I haven't gone about in this to create any new word or custom. By getting married, I didn't invent a new habit or a new custom, and I didn't create a new word. Marriage is all over the place. Hundreds and thousands and millions of people get married as we speak. What's wrong with that?" So obviously she's talking sense to somebody who is senseless, somebody who is almost mad, pathologically mad. Obviously, you can't really tell why that kind of anger and this overwhelming wrath that he is having. But see her language. Why might not I marry? Why not? I didn't invent I didn't come up with a new custom or habit. Marriage is customary. It has always been there. Okay, marriage is legitimate. I didn't create a new world by getting married, for God's sake. See how different her language is. She's very reasoned and reasonable. She is very um, she knows how to conduct herself. And obviously, she is also, we're getting swayed with her speech. We love her, we admire her because she can stand up uh, uh, against him. She is defending herself. She is very forceful in what she is saying. She believes in the fairness and the justice of her cause. So she is inviting our sympathy. Uh, and yeah, and she's talking sense to us. Yes, marrying a second time is indeed not creating any new world again, but from a 16th and 17th century perspective, marrying the wrong guy can be a problem. So her conduct here is contrasting with that of her husband. So we're comparing her to pretty much every male character that we have. And she wins. She emerges victorious over them all. So she said what she said in this verbal combat between her and her uh, brother. She defeated him like you can never imagine, verbally, by talking sense, by giving him or letting him see the reasonableness and the logic behind this kind of marriage, because it's a marriage after all. And you cannot help also but not compare her to her husband. You would ask, where is her husband? Her husband is outside. Every time you need him, he's not there, for good reasons, of course, because she is stronger in character, she is more emphatic, she's obviously more manly than he actually is. So if you compare her to Antonio, she will also win. Antonio is outside. He only comes when Fernand is out of the way, when Fernand leaves, and he comes and he starts to to act as if he's there to defend her. Where is he? And he is carrying a small pistol, making threats. And this is only happening once Fernand is safely out of the way, and when Fernand leaves. That can be also very comic. Okay. Um, the Duchess knows that this conversation is not going to go like that. This kind of confrontation between him and her is not going to go down easily. She knows that is going to scheme and plan. So that's why, because she is very practical, she knows what she's doing. She decides to, she thought of a plan so that she can send Antonio and the kids outside the country. Again, she knows that it's not safe anymore, and she decides to stay. And for her to stay and for them to leave, obviously, this is another indication that she's very strong and she's very daring and courageous. So, what was the plan? She decides that she's going to make it seem that Antonio is a thief, somebody who embezzles money, and you trust him with money and he takes the money for himself. She she's going to tell everybody that Antonio is not to be trusted anymore. He is um, an embezzler, somebody who steals money, and um, and she's going to ask him to leave to kind of escape with the kids. Um, and this is the plan. He's going to go to another dukedom or another city. Um, and everybody knows in the royal court that Antonio is now accused of those kinds of accusations. So everybody starts to treat Antonio or to think of Antonio differently. They used to like him and respect him. Now, because he is out of favor, he is no longer interested in. People are trying to go away from him. And again, this is perhaps a message that the writer is sending. If you are in favor, everybody likes you and everybody respects you. Once you are out of favor, nobody cares about you. So we have Antonio's escape to Ancona. Ancona is the place that he's going to escape to. And the cover would be the Duchess trumped up charge of embezzlement, etc. Um, it's very strange that nobody is going to react to this kind of charge or accusation. And the only one who is going to question this kind of charge or accusation is Busola. See, of course, prior to that, we didn't know that Busola and Antonio were on good terms and they were friends. They were never friends. They are lowborn, um, but they are never friends. And perhaps Busola can have his own reasons to hate Antonio all the more. But Busola, for some reason, felt angry and sad. He felt sad for Antonio and would ask why. With his experience, he knows that this is not, this is perhaps a fake charge. It's not true that he stole money or he embezzled or something. He knows that this is a trumped up charge. But he is not focused on this as much as he is focused on the idea that if you are low-born and if you are uh, um, a commoner, it's easy to fall out of favor. So today, if you work with perhaps somebody big, and he or she, like I always say, if he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, he has changed his mood for the worse. He can fire you or something. Correspondingly, if he is in good mood, you can stay. So it's not about what merits you have or you bring. It's about the mood of this kind of person. So this is what Busola is fearful of and is against the idea that you can easily fall out of favor, especially if you work in a royal court. Or you can never tell what may happen tomorrow to you because it's not a merit. He says that even the Duchess is whimsical in her decision. Whimsical, it means she acts on whims. It's not that these are not true causes or reasons. She just she's not in the mood. That's why she came up with those charges. Of course, she doesn't know yet that she's doing that in order to cover for Antonio and allow him to escape. So again, Busola here is defending the now disgraced Antonio. So Busola is left alone on stage to deliver a soliloquy where he reveals to us as members of the audience that he's going to tell Fernand everything he has just learned. Um, Again, we have this idea of whether Busola is sincere in his defense of Antonio or what. Again, it all comes down to the idea that Busola is also a lowborn, and perhaps he is thinking of himself. If this happens to Antonio today, it may happen to me tomorrow. I may fall out of favor, and the next thing you know is they either imprison me, kill me, uh, or run after me. We spoke enough about Busola as a character and how complicated and ambiguous this character is. And we said that he stands in a long line of tradition that we call the malcontent character. It's a character that we see in other tragedies and plays. And I remember Malvolio in A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare, for example. You have um, similar characters in Hamlet, in King Lear, and the other plays. The malcontent character despises courtly corruption, but at the same time, he is hopelessly implicated in it. So you're attacking corruption, but you are ready to become part of it if it means having more money, having a promotion. So it's very complex and it's very self-contradictory. So he wants social advancement, but hates and loses the servility that comes with it. We spoke about the idea that we haven't seen them being on good terms. I mean, Busola and Antonio. So obviously, his motivations for defending Antonio are perhaps it can be humanity, that the humanity that they share, and their vulnerability as low-born individuals. If it happens to Antonio today, it may happen to me tomorrow. So, as a courtly official who is low-born, uh, like Antonio, he is seeing Antonio being dismissed from his office, apparently on the whim of the Duchess. And he can see that the attitude of other people towards him are now different. I mean, that it is as if Antonio became a black sheep overnight. Everybody is disowning him, and nobody talks to him anymore. And this is a very good occasion for Busola to reflect on politicians and the political schemer. And he says that there are tons of them in royal courts. Uh, he believes that the politician and the political schemer is more of the devil's quilted anvil. So again, this is a very vivid metaphor that he is using. Again, tells you a great deal about his character and the how deep his character is. Again, sometimes you may, I mean, whatever he says would invoke the character of Iago, but obviously he is totally different. He said that Iago doesn't have the profundity and the complexity that we're having with Busola. And he has those bouts of uh, self-realization. Sometimes he even criticizes himself, but those are very brief moments. So he says about himself that this base quality of intelligence. He knows that he gets hired to do dirty business, Sometimes he has those bangs of conscience, but they are normally followed by a horrible act, killing somebody, silencing somebody, going to jail for hurting somebody for other people. So again, it's about this complexity of character that we're having with Basola. He wants preferment, uh, um, but he knows that in order to have this preferment and advancement, it comes at a cost. He has to uh, uh, do other people's bidding. Okay, so what is now? It has now been revealed that the Duchess is now married and she has kids. And uh, news is spreading that and circulating that she got married to a lowborn. Whether they know now who this lowborn is, I mean, it doesn't obviously make any difference. Uh, he is a lowborn after all. But they get to know, the Cardinal and Ferdinand get to know from Bussola. Um, they get to know about the identity of their sister's husband. And he also tells them that the family, I mean, Antonio and the kids, are seeking refuge and sanctuary in the state of Anacno. Okay, so what will be the reaction? The Cardinal is going to dress uh, as a soldier and is going to have the paraphernalia of a soldier. Remember, he is also a clergyman, and he's going to carry his sword and he's going to go so that he can kind of banish and dismiss them and even kill them if he can. What happens takes the form of a dumb show. So a dumb show means a performance within the play. It's a performance within performance. So we're having a show. We're taken to the stage where you have a dumb show. So it's a show, it means a play. It's a play within a play, and it's dumb. Dumb means that the characters don't speak. They use their body language, they use their facial expressions, but they never speak. And when asked why would we have dumb shows, sometimes we are told that dumb shows are more suggestive than actual shows where people speak, because speech is limited. But if somebody is using his hands and his body movements, that can be more expressive and it can the interpretation you are left to interpret. You come up with your own interpretations about the situation in the dumb show. So interpretation is up for grabs. Everyone can come up with his own interpretation. But if I'm saying something, obviously it's one single interpretation that I'm giving you because I'm saying things. But if I leave it and I use my body language and my facial expressions, obviously you can interpret those facial expressions the way you like. So by removing speech and focusing instead on mimed action, the dumb show achieves a highly symbolic pictorial style of theatrical representation. So as you can see, meaning here is conveyed through spectacle, through the show, rather than through words. Again, this is also meant to distance us a little bit from what is happening so that we don't get emotionally involved. Because if we get emotionally involved and emotionally immersed in what is happening, we wouldn't be able to judge things the right way because our emotions and feelings are going to take control. So that's why The writer is trying to create this kind of distance by having this dumb show. Mm. So what we're seeing in this dumb show, this visual tableau, is prompting us to step back and evaluate the moral implications of what is happening on the stage. So where is this dumb show given, as the stage directions are telling us? It is happening in a religious shrine, in a place of a religious place of worship. And there is music that is obviously very solemn, very serious. And you have a number of churchmen. It's as if you're seeing or witnessing a a funeral, funeral service. And this is anticipatory of what will happen next, because the Duchess will be killed. And of course, she would need burial, proper burial. Whenever you have proper burial, you have solemn music, you have prayers and all those kinds of things. Again, coming back to the cardinal, who is in his um, military attire, having spurs and shields and helmets and swords, and he is also giving you a show of religiosity. Remember, he is a religious, a man of God, quote unquote, of course, where you have, he's giving you or showing a cross, a hat, robes, and a ring. So again, if anything, that would tell you about the superficiality of the cardinal's religious vocation and the ecclesiastical or the religious corruption he has constantly represented. And again, a part of this dumb show would be the idea that they are going to forcibly take the wedding ring from the fingers of the Duchess, who is now presented as dead. And part of this dumb show, you have two pilgrims, two characters, and they are commenting on what is happening. And um, they believe that what they are seeing is a noble ceremony, and that there is this state of crisis and distress. And they are starting to exchange questions and judgments. For them, for example, they believe um, that the lady is, or the Duchess is to blame for matching herself unto so mean a person. They believe in the separation of classes. She is on top and Antonio is at the bottom, and they shouldn't love and get married. But they believe that she is also of noble blood. She shouldn't have been treated this way. She is a free prince. Okay, so it is true that she is to blame, but they believe that her brother shouldn't be that harsh on her. Um, so the Pilgrim's commentary invites us to grasp the moral and political significance of the Duchess' banishment rather than her own experience of it. So it presents her and her family as the victims of an institutional conspiracy. This is perhaps what sticks with us, that for all what the Duchess did in the eyes of her family and in the eyes of her society. She was a victim of institutional conspiracy. Everybody is conspiring against her. During this dumb show, uh, um, Webster is using devices. Some of them are modern, and some of them are medieval. The dumb show itself is a remnant of the medieval period. It reminds you and reminds us of the Middle Ages, while the characters and what they do and the issues that they are addressing are very realistic. So, realism, which links the play to modernity and the modern times, and the dumb show that links the play to the medieval period. And then we come to the idea of tragedies, early modern tragedies. And of course, part of this early modern tragedies, traditions, and conventions have to do with the idea of torture. Remember, this is also a revenge tragedy where torture is very important. So we're talking about the Duchess torture and death and the punishment meted out against her for her forbidden love and marriage. Um, as part of the conventions of revenge tragedies, she's going to be imprisoned in her palace, and she's going to be subjected to all kinds of psychological um, terror and torture. She's going to be shown uh, and exposed to a dead man's hand, complete with wedding ring. So they are going to give her the appearance of a dead man's hand, obviously cut off with a wedding ring, and they are going to make it seem that this is her husband, and they're going to give her the wax tabloos of her husband and children. She's going to believe, or she's going to be made to believe that they are dead, and these are dead bodies, and um, mad people are dancing around her. So again, this is psychological torment. So as if they are trying to break her spirit before they actually and physically killed her. Again, this is no strange. This is something that we're familiar with during the time because this was the time of the revenge tragedy. The revenge tragedy was the trend, and we had so many revenge tragedies at the time. For example, the Spanish tragedy by Thomas Kidd. You have Hamlet by William Shakespeare. You have this play, of course, by Webster and other revenge tragedies. So again, it's all about revenge, and it's you have lots of murders. You also have this idea of a play within a play. um, and normally in revenge tragedies, one of the characters comes out, normally perhaps the malcontented character, and here we have Musola who kind of explains to the audience what is happening and why what is happening. And this is actually what Musola does. And he speaks to the Duchess and explains to her why. So, who is masterminding all those kinds of things and the torture that is being meted out against the Duchess? Of course, it's Fernand. Fernand is using the theater as um, a tool of control. He is the one who is ordering all those kinds of things. So, of course, we know, as members of the audience, we know that, Antonio is alive and the kids are still alive, but the Duchess doesn't, of course, doesn't know. Again, this is meant by Ferdinand to drive his sister to despair. So, as you can see, Fernand, the aristocratic villain, uses theater as an instrument of control. And then we move to Act 4. Again, Act 4 is all about this kind of suffering that the Duchess is exposed to, suffering that will eventually, and torture that will eventually lead to her death. And eventually, because they are going to execute her. So her death takes on an enormous significance. Um, so, like we said, Fernand's aim is not merely to murder his sister, but to bring her to despair and to break her spirit. See how evil he is. Again, before she dies and while being tortured and suffering, she is going to give us yet another example of her valor and courage and her Christian belief and the fact that she believes that perhaps death can be the end of suffering, and when she dies, she's going to go she will be in good company with people that are perhaps better than the people that she met, and she is going to be reunited with her husband and kids because she is under the impression that they are dead. Um, and this is one of the things that she says: in the eternal church, sir, I do hope we shall not part thus. She's telling Antonio, perhaps she's talking to herself and she's having Antonio in mind. She's saying that, yeah, I do hope we shall not part thus. We're going to meet in eternal church when we die in the hereafter. Um, so she actually believed that this is not the end. It's perhaps the beginning of eternal life that is full of blessings and love and everything. Again, at one point she was asked about that by Cruella. Dost thou think we shall know one another in the other? She was asking Hermia, don't you think that we may meet each other in the hereafter? So she has this belief that people meet in the hereafter when they die. She believes in the hereafter. And then when they are preparing her for her death, I mean Busola obviously and his gang, um, he felt that she doesn't fear death, and he was very astonished. And he asked her, "Does does not death fright you? Aren't you afraid of death?" And the answer is eloquent as ever. Who would be afraid on it, knowing to meet such excellent company? She is showing the fact that she is reassured that life there and the hereafter is way better. She says, why would I be afraid? I'm going to meet excellent company, excellent people in the other world. See how steadfast, how much of a believer she is. And then she gives us a final speech, also full of nuggets of wisdom, um, about the difference between perhaps the arcs of a palace and the arcs of heaven, and heaven's gates are not so highly arced. And when you think of it, or you come to think of it, you're going to realize that religion is not the only source of power and strength that she's having. She also has other sources of inspiration and support that she's relying on. She doesn't fear death. She believes, for example, that this death is only a release from intolerable suffering and pain. And then we have the executioners, and they are discussing what kind of death they can give her. Should they kill her using knives, or perhaps they can strangle her or poison her? It's very scary, you know. But you would compare that to her steadfastness, the fact that she doesn't fear any of that. It's one death that she is going to have, and obviously, according to her, good people are awaiting her. And also, she believes that she is also royalty. And as a royal individual, as an aristocrat, the idea of honor is very important. She believes that she is dying an honorable kind of death. She shouldn't fear anything, but because it's honor that she has in mind. Again, these are ideas that you normally associate with men. This idea of heroism, this idea of having this kind of dignity and believing in honor, these are things that people used to associate with men, and but not anymore, I promise you. Here, she is giving us an example that women are also capable of that. So to limit heroism to men is obviously not the right thing to do. She is in this way creating a character who has been called the first fully tragic woman in Renaissance drama. She is that woman, very heroic, very glamorous and very honorable. And I would like you to look at this and compare her death, which is very dignified and very honorable, to the kinds of death that we're going to have with the rest of the characters, Ferdinand, Bussola, the Cardinal. And then uh, she she's killed, obviously, and then Bussola is going to go to Fernand in order to tell him that we killed her at your request. Where is our money? And Fernand is going to show that after all, she is his sister. And of course, he loves her so much, no matter what. And he's going to try to distance himself from Busola and his deed by saying, the fact that I'm not punishing you for killing her would be your own reward. Go away. Get out of my sight. See? So he is showing um, that he is still a human being, but perhaps when it's much too late, because when he refers to himself and thinks of the fact that she is truly dead and killed, he's going to have those bouts of madness. He's going to turn mad, as we're going to see. How about Busola? Busola, because he was declined, he was rejected, and he was not given, he was denied the money that he was promised. He's going to feel regretful and remorseful over killing them. And he's going to start to take revenge for her. Remember? He's the one who killed her and he's now taking revenge. See how ironic this is? So he's going to show signs of repentance, that he is regretful. Um, he's going to try to kill the cardinal, and he's going to mistake him for somebody else. And then he's going to kill um, Antonio instead by mistake. And he's going, I mean, and it's going to be, you know, a lot of killing. Everybody is obviously killing everybody else. As a sign of repentance, perhaps. Don't know for whom, because I don't believe one bit that he was repentant. She comes back to life very momentarily. You know, she has sometimes when somebody dies and he comes momentarily and then dies again. He tries to reassure her that Antonio is alive and that he is now reconciled to her brother, which is not true. It is true that Antonio is alive, but he is not reconciled to her brothers. And then he starts to talk about what he did and the fact that I mean, killing her will never give him any peace of mind. And and the wealth of Europe wouldn't take this feeling of guilt away from him. Again, it's this kind of character is very ambiguous. You can never tell whether those are true feelings that he have or he has now. Obviously, you wouldn't believe him because every time he says something good, he follows it with a horrible action. And what can be more horrible than killing the Duchess? Again, we wouldn't also overlook the fact that Ferdinand is trying to kind of distance himself and is trying to say that I'm not part of it, but he is part of it in every bit of it, of course. And blaming the servant for committing the murder wouldn't obviously take the guilt of him. And he knows deep down, he knows all about it. And that's why he's going to suffer all the more. Again, he knows that what he is responsible, and that's why we're going to see those levels of mental instability that he is stepping into. And this is also a sign of Ferdinand's feeling of guilt and also love for his sister, flesh and blood sister. He says, cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. She died young. He doesn't want to see her face, dead, of course, obviously. And he said that she died young. I mean, this is a sign of remorse. But when it's, no, obviously, it wouldn't work. He is all the more villainous. He is all the more bad and nasty in our eyes. Again, he's going to be obsessed with this kind of murder, and he's going to be falling apart deteriorating into the lunacy. He becomes over time um, visibly mad, and this is what is going to characterize him in Act 5. And this is one of the things. I'll go hunt the badger by owl light. This is a deed of darkness. He says that what we did is a deed of darkness. Indeed, it is. So when was the Duchess killed? When did she fall? She fell in Act 4. Again, this is very strange because we're so used to the idea that if you have a tragic hero or heroine for that matter, you expect him to die in Act 5. So why Act 4? And is it acceptable? Yeah, for lots of critics, this is not acceptable. This is a violation of the traditions and conventions of tragedies. In tragedies and in typical tragedies, the tragic hero falls in Act 5. So why did Webster kill his heroine in Act 4? People say that this is male bias. He is biased because he is male. It is true that introducing a tragic hero is quite unprecedented, and this is innovative and good, but obviously he changed his mind over the course of the play. He thought of the backlash that he's going to get from male members of the audience. He said, I should kind of make up for the mistake that I made by giving the play a tragic heroine, by killing her in Act 4 before everybody realizes the enormity of my mistake, if you like. So he kills her in Act 4. And this is something that feminist critics wouldn't let go. They started to criticize him and rebuke him for this. Um, and then they ask very logical questions. If the tragic hero or heroine is killed in Act 4, what do we have in Act 5? Obviously, the tragic hero is the one around whom everything revolves, the action and the ideas. So if you have the Act 5 without the tragic hero or heroine, obviously the whole play may crumble. Okay, so Webster is a very seasoned writer, and he knows that taking off the tragic heroine of the play in very early in Act 4 and not in 5 is can ruin the play. That's why in Act 5 he is going to give us um, give us the impressions that yeah, it is true that she is dead, but she's there with people. When people talk about her, for example, when people assume or have delusions and illusions that she is around, um, with her voice echoing and giving directions, appearing as a ghost for some of them. So he is trying to keep her in Act 5. Yeah, he killed her, it is true, in 4, but she is somehow there in Act 4. Would this trick work? Obviously, it didn't, because Act 5 turned into a farce. Um, it's something grotesque that doesn't have a head or a tail. It's sad and comic. It's a dark comedy that we're having, where everybody is running after everybody else in order to get to him and kill him. So one of the main points of the scene is to convey to the readers and spectators that the Duchess continued presence in the world of the play. And that's why we have characters like Busola saying that, "Tell me things the Duchess haunts me." So haunting happens when you are visited by a ghost. And then the echo scene where there is another haunting. So there is this element of the supernatural. There is, and obviously this is also one of the conventions of the revenge tragedy. So again, this is where we have this ghosting and echoing thing that would kind of link the play to the conventions of revenge tragedy, where ghosts often haunt revenge tragedies, bring messages to the living from beyond the grave. And then we come to the moment of truth. Everybody has to pay for what they have done, um, and everybody has to die a tragic kind of death. But their kinds of death wouldn't compare to the noble and dignified death of the Queen, of the Duchess. For Fernand, for example, is going to have this feeling of lecn, no, it's a little bit tongue twister, lecnotherapy or lycanthropy. Lycanthropy is a delusion or a feeling in which one imagines himself or herself to be a wolf or other wild animal. You would feel that you are not a human being, you're uh, an animal, especially a wolf. So he has this feeling. What makes it even worse would be the fact that he feels that he has this wolf feelings. So he has been transformed into a wolf whose skin is hair on the inside rather than the outside. So this is obviously is a clear mental collapse. Again, it's all due to the murder of the Duchess. So he is driven mad by guilt, and he has this self-hatred or self-disgust, revulsion that converts him of being no better than the most vicious of animals, the wolf. Again, it's very clear that this is the kind of reckoning that we're having. He is, this is the divine retribution. And then we have the cardinal. The cardinal is also paying for his transgressions, for his infringements. Uh, we're told, for example, that he believes that he cannot pray. He finds praying very futile because he believes that none of his prayers will be accepted or answered by God, which is true. And then he is going to also kill his mistress, Julia, uh, after growing weary of her and very afraid and suspicious. And he's going to kill her using a poison Bible, which is also one of the conventions of the revenge tragedy. So he has a bad conscience, and in all his soliloquies now, he believes that, I mean, it's better for him to dissolve and become no more. He believes that he is going to go to hell. Yeah, he is not mentally collapsing, but he has mental disturbance. Yeah, he knows that he wouldn't get away with it. he will eventually go to hell and be damned for what he did. And then we have Busola. Again, he doesn't feel okay. He is suffering from those pangs of conscience. He knows that nothing will help him. Uh, and what um, perhaps makes it even worse for him would be the fact that instead of protecting Antonio, he kills him by mistake. So his quest for redemption is never is never um, met or fulfilled. Every time he tries to do something good, he follows it with something bad, whether he does it knowingly or unwittingly, unknowingly, like in the case of Antonio here. So it's grim humor that we're having here. People are running after each other. There is a great deal of noise. Fernand is acting like an animal. Of course, you know how animals behave and the voices that they make. So it's a farce. And other people are running after other people. The colonel is screaming for help. So it becomes a farce. Again, far away from the dignity and the seriousness of the previous acts when the Duchess was active and alive. So everybody is stabbing everybody else and everybody is killed. And then we come to a very interesting idea here. It's the idea of after all what they did, how do these characters, these evil characters, look at life? What did they achieve? And was it worth it? Was it worth it killing and conspiring and planning? The answer that they all agreed on was no, it wasn't worth it. Okay, so what do we see? We see their bodies and their corpses littering the stage, filling the stage. And then each on his own, in his dying moments, is giving us what he thinks life is and what he thinks life normally comes down to. And then we start with Busola. Busola believes that life is not worth it. How? He believes that human beings like himself are mere tennis balls. What do you do with tennis balls? I mean, you hit them back and forth. So obviously they don't have a will of their own. You just hit them, right? So he believes that we are in the grip of forces beyond our control that hits us back and forth as if we are tennis balls, which means we are nothing, right? So it wasn't worth it fighting and killing and all those kinds of things. So he is trying to say that human beings have no free will and no real significance. He says that we're simply the playthings of probably malevolent comic forces. And then we have Ferdinand. Is his message going to be different? No, not different. Perhaps different in degree. If the other person is talking about the cosmos and life here, this guy is talking about um, the psychology of human beings and how self-destructive we are. According to Fernand, whether we fall by ambition, blood, or lust, Like diamonds, we are cut with our own dust. He's trying to say that, for all the hustle that we are engaged in, going here and there, working hard and doing this and doing something good, and some other things are bad and everything. What it comes down to is that we are the prisoners of our own temperaments. We're driven by forces, passions, and instincts over which we have minimum control. Yeah. So we have this capacity for self-destruction. Again, he's trying to say, yeah, it wasn't worth it. Killing my sister, killing everybody in my way, conspiring, wanting to be perhaps the Duke. No, it didn't work. And it all comes down to the fact that I am imprisoned in my own temperament. I am the prisoner of my own temperament. I have no control over my feelings and emotions and instincts. So here, while Busola focuses on the cosmos, Fernand focuses on the human personality. We have no influence, or we have no control over our personalities. I mean, we are mere, we are driven. We're not the drivers. We are driven to do what we do and to behave the way we do. Even Antonio is also giving us his take on what life is and what ambition is. He believes in in the vanity of human ambition. He believes that it's not worth it still. In our quest of greatness, like wanton boys whose pastime is their care, we follow after bubbles blown in the air. You know what bubbles are, right? Bubbles, if you're chasing or following a bubble, obviously this is an exercise in futility. It's uselessness, because once you reach the bubble, it explodes, right? So obviously you're pursuing nothing. You're pursuing futility, habit, right? So he is giving us another lesson in the vanity of human wishes, and that self-advancement is ultimately futile. And then the cardinal is also sharing his vision. His vision is very um, fatalistic and also very minimalistic. I mean, he doesn't want anything. He knows that life is nothing. He believes in his own insignificance. All he wants to do is to be laid by and never thought of. He doesn't want to be remembered. He doesn't want. He believes that if people forget totally about him, that would mean that he didn't exist, and this is what he wants. He wants to believe that he didn't exist in the first place. Again, it's insignificance in its best forms and shapes. He reminds me, by the way, of Dr. Faustus, if you still remember. Towards in his end, he wanted to be a drop in the ocean, or to dig a hole and perhaps bury himself and never to be remembered. Again, as you can see, the absence of the Duchess is very heavily felt. And of course, you wouldn't compare the presence of these characters to her presence. Uh, she is truly and sorely missed, of course. Again, you would also um, like to look at how they died and how she died. She died honorable. She died very dignified and very courageous one. And their death, as you can see, is, I mean, perhaps somebody is mistaking somebody for somebody else, running after each other. It's fair. It's more of a farce or a circus that we're having in Act 5. Okay? So you يعني compare being killed or being dying, or compare dying in a circus and dying in a palace or in a battlefield. So the Duchess died in a palace, and obviously she was fighting as if she was in a battlefield, and this is honorable death. But here, in the case of the other characters, that it was more, Act 5 was more of a circus, and they died in this kind of circus. Obviously, very uh, bizarre kinds of death and all those kinds of things. And then you have Deleu also commenting on the whole thing. And this is what he says: these wretched eminent things leave no more fame behind them than should one fall in a frost and leave his print in snow as soon as this. I mean, he's saying that those guys and their death was more or less like people, uh, like they were snow, for example. Their death was more or less like snow. The next day, if the sun shines, this snow melts. So this kind of snow is no more. So this is them. They didn't leave any impression on life. They are no more. They didn't leave. They don't have a legacy like the Duchess uh, has. So they are wretched, eminent things, lying dead on the stage, and the footprint in snow condemns Fernand and the cardinal to obscurity and oblivion. Nobody is going to remember them. They are erased from historical records. And here we also have talk about the future, where the play ends on a note of optimism because we have the child and the children of Antonio. It is true that Antonio is warning them against pursuing careers in royal courts, but they are there, um, and they are still a source of hope amidst all this kind of darkness that we're seeing. And then we come, I mean, the wheel comes full circle about the Duchess of Malfi and what kind of tragedy it is. We've been talking about that all through. Yeah, it is a tragedy. It is a revenge tragedy with all the conventions that we have been highlighting. Um, and perhaps part of the reason why we're asking this question again, perhaps um, to again answer the question whether the Duchess is blameless. Should we feel that she's blameless and she did what she did in good faith and she's innocent, or would we blame her for part of what is happening? Perhaps this is what I would like you to think of until we meet again next week. I would like you to think of the Duchess and what she did, and whether you think she is also to blame for what happened to her, defying her society and its expectations, or you think that she is um, um, different, and she's a standard bearer, and she's starting something new, and all those kinds of things. If you have any questions, come to the mic. Okay. On this note and with this item, we come to the end of today's class. I'll see you next week, and next week we'll have Candide. And with Candide, we will have finished the part or the parts that the midterm is going to test or examine or cover. We have in the midterm, we normally have the introduction to the age. We have Othello, the Duchess of Malfi, and Candide. So until then, I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum. Bye bye.